Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hello, I'm Stephen Willis from the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, and we are joined by Keith Carter, the athletic director, or I guess, what is the exact title that you have?
Vice Chancellor for Intercollegiate Athletics, but I never refer to myself as that. You got it right. I'm the AD.
Yes. Thank you very much for joining the show. There's a lot of stuff. People have asked me all the time whenever they knew that you were probably coming on the show. They had questions about what's going on with Champions now. What are the major projects and how are we stacking up going into 2024?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Obviously, at the Sugar Bowl, we launched a big campaign. Champions Now is $350 million, and kind of about 6 months later, NIL really became a thing, and trying to navigate that world. So we backed down on some of the projects. We actually took the stadium component out of that. We were going to do the west side and totally redo that, come all the way down to the slab and rebuild. And we kind of put that on the shelf for now until we get a little more footing and kind of, see where we're going in the NIL space and from that perspective. But we finished the Manning Center project. Obviously, the team is in there now. They're enjoying their new locker room space and the new coaches' offices and those type of things. So that's been a really good project. That was about $45 million of the campaign. We're right in the middle of construction on the new softball stadium. Actually, our ladies will have their first game in there today, very soon. Not a finished product yet, but the field is ready, and they're going to be able to play, and the games will be on TV and be broadcasted. The video board's ready. So a lot of the components are finished. The grandstand's not quite there yet. It'll be being worked on throughout the season and hopefully be ready before next year. But that's a great project. I know our young ladies are very excited about that. We've got some, you may have seen some stuff we're going to be doing in our baseball stadium down the third base line that will start after the season, new premium seating and new entrance there, and place where we can really honor our national championship team, which we're really excited about that. And then we'll be doing some renovations to our soccer stadium, our golf facility. So we've got a few things going, and all things that we're very excited about. As you know, Stephen, like if you're not building, you're falling behind. You've got to continue to build, and these facilities are so important for our young people and our coaches. So we're excited about the campaign for sure.
Yeah, whenever I was on staff with Coach Cutcliffe way back in the day, he'd always say, you're either getting better or you're getting worse. You're never staying the same.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I, along with us and some others, I think some people have taken a little step back in the facilities arms race, just again to kind of navigate the environment that we're in right now. But it sure doesn't mean that you're stopping or slowing down a whole lot, because we also, we know NIL is really important, but we know that facilities and making sure that these young people have the resources they need to compete and win at the highest level, so important.
So you've been on the job a couple of years as AD at Ole Miss, and can you just explain to people why hiring coaches is so easy for you?
Well, it's not easy. Hiring anybody is probably a 50-50 proposition at best, in any profession. Because you just never know. You think you can have it all signed, sealed, and delivered. You've got the right person, and they check all the boxes, and sometimes it just doesn't work. But I think with our last two hires, with football and basketball, I think certainly they checked the boxes. Those guys were great coaches, and people that can come in and galvanize the fan base and all those things. But ultimately, you got to come in and perform. And Coach Kiffin has done that, and Coach Beard, his sample size isn't quite as big as Coach Kiffin's, but it's been a great year, 19-9, and coming off a tough year last year. So I think some of it's luck. I think some of it is timing and all those things. But I think the other thing is, once we hire coaches, we want to make sure that when they get here, that we support them. We expect them to win at a high level. We're in the SEC, and we want to win championships, and so. We can't expect that and not support them and resource them at that level too. So I think hopefully most, if not all, of our coaches feel like they have the resources that they need to compete and win at the highest level. And I think that's a big part of it too.
From hiring Lane Kiffin to hiring Chris Beard, what changed in that interim? Because all of college sports changed. Like the main question and things that they wanted to know, like what Chris Beard wanted to know and what Lane Kiffin wanted to know. How did that change?
Yeah, it changed a lot. We were just talking about facilities, and obviously they are very, very important, and we're going to continue to enhance and renovate and do all those things. But NIL has really just flipped everything upside down. I think a lot of these coaches now are dealing in that space, and prospective student athletes want to know how your NIL program is. And when we hired Coach Kiffin, that wasn't even a thing. And so that certainly changed. The transfer portal has really changed the game as well. You're seeing these rosters turn over so much, and that's the beauty of really any sport, but basketball in particular. You can flip the roster and get really good really quick, and so I think we've seen that this year with what Coach Beard has done. Coach Yo's done a fantastic job of that as well. So I just think there's a lot of factors that are different. But again, in any industry, things change, and you got to accept change and keep pushing forward and embrace it and try to tackle it the best you can. And I think our coaches have certainly done that.
Everybody is basically in agreement that something needs to be done about college athletics, but they're not exactly sure what it is. And right now there's this weird dynamic between the NCAA and the collectives. And I know that you and Walker, y'all are on as good a footing as you can get. Heck, I think we were all at Ole Miss at the same time back in the late 90s. But the NCAA, sometimes whenever they're doing these congressional hearings, it almost sounds like they're a little bit at war. That the collective is the enemy, and we're not that case. But can you explain what's kind of going on there, maybe?
Yeah, I think again, just with change and things that are new, I think sometimes people are faster to jump in that space, and sometimes people are slower. And, I think here at Ole Miss, to your point, we felt like we needed to take an aggressive approach. We felt like, NIL and transfer portal and all this could work to our favor, and it has. And, again, thankful for the collective and our athletics foundation and just everybody that's been involved, our donors, clearly. They've done a great job. But, there is the newness. And when you look at kind of the structure and how the NCAA and college athletics has been functioning for, forever before this. I think sometimes it's hard to kind of, the old dogs and new tricks deal. It's just one of those things. It's hard to make that adjustment. And again, we're not in a pay for play. It shouldn't be a strictly pay for play world. We all understand that there's got to be services and things that have to happen through the collective and appearances and, all those things that they need to do to make sure that they're keeping their end of the bargain as student athletes. But I feel really confident that, our team here in athletics, the collective, we've done things the right way. And, I think that's been a great relationship, and hopefully we can continue that. But yeah, just, it's just something new. And I think the NCAA, obviously with these lawsuits that are out there now, that Tennessee and Virginia, last week was a big week from that perspective. So it'll be interesting to see kind of where it goes and, how the NCAA responds from that.
Well, where it looks like it's going, the SEC and the Big Ten, they've kind of, they've been playing tug of war for about 100 years. And then all of a sudden in the last 2 years, they're like, hey, maybe we started pulling this rope in the same direction. Maybe we can take more of a leadership role in college athletics. And it appears the Big Ten and the SEC are kind of throwing their weight around. And there was an article by Pete Thamel and Heather Dinich that actually mentioned, they just buried into the article that presidents and chancellors were having deep conversations about their membership in the NCAA. And whenever you look at that can be anxiety inducing just for the general fan. But what exactly is going on here? I think the breakup, like we talked about, the breakup's probably coming to where the Power Five is going to become their own division, but probably within the NCAA. But whenever you're talking about the membership in the NCAA, that's kind of anxiety inducing.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's our job is to navigate all that and make sure, my job is to make sure Ole Miss ends up in the best possible spot. And Greg's job is to make sure the SEC ends up in the best possible spot. I think we need to caution ourselves on believing everything we read. I think sometimes, these stories get out there and they have some of the information, but not all the information from these meetings. But I agree with you 100% on the fact that with the SEC and the Big Ten, having some conversations, trying to lead from the front, it makes a lot of sense. It really does. I mean, I know Greg has a great relationship with the commissioner of the Big Ten, Tony Petitti. I know they talk a lot. And it's one of those things where you're either going to be told how this is going to work or you're going to help craft how it's going to work. And I think that, we're very, very blessed to have a commissioner like Greg Sankey who is proactive. He's thoughtful. He's a guy that really doesn't miss much. I mean, he's total, he consumes everything and really is a joy to work with in our league. And we as Ole Miss, and I know all the members of the SEC feel very fortunate to have him leading the charge. So it's going to be fun. And, again, challenging, you look at it as a challenge or an opportunity. Yeah, it's both, it's going to be hard as we navigate some of this, but I do think when we look from the other side, it's going to be a pretty cool process.
And the 12-team playoff is occurring this year. Ole Miss, basically everybody is predicted in it. So what are you doing as an athletic department preparing for what is probably the most anticipated football season in 70 years at Ole Miss?
Yeah, the bowl game, the Peach Bowl was so much fun. Obviously played great against Penn State, and to cap off an 11-win season was amazing. You love it for the team and the coaches and the fans, everybody. The AD liked it too. But I think what I'm probably more excited about than even that 11 wins and all the great things we did last year is just the momentum that it's created for our program. And obviously we are the talk of the country. And when we hired Coach Kiffin, you talk about becoming relevant. You talk about becoming a national figure and getting talked about on College Game Day and being a staple in the top 10. And, the past couple of years, we're right there. And so it's pretty cool to see some of this come to fruition. Not that we're at the pinnacle. We're certainly not at the pinnacle yet. We feel like there's a lot more to accomplish, but at least we're in the conversation. And that's really awesome. And so, it feels like a little bit of a perfect storm for us because, the portal, the NIL and all the stuff we just talked about. And then the playoff goes to 12 teams, which gives you more opportunity and, an entry there to potentially do that. But there's still a ton of work, and Coach Kiffin would probably frown on this conversation at all because, you got to get all these guys in and make sure they gel, and you got spring practice, you got all the way through the summer, you got to stay healthy. But, you love the fact that we're set up where we are. The roster seems like it's going to be one of the best we've ever had, but certainly a lot of work to do, and I know Coach Kiffin and the team's looking forward to that.
Well, we're really going to put the cart in front of the horse right here. Let's say Ole Miss is hosting a playoff game in Vaught-Hemingway in mid-December. Let's say Notre Dame is coming in for a playoff game. 500,000 people in Oxford?
I think you could argue to be the biggest game ever in Oxford. I mean, I think that it's going to be one of those and playing mid-December. Obviously, it'll be probably pretty chilly and all of that. But, it gives me anxiety a little bit from the ticket requests that I know we're going to receive. But it's, you certainly, that's why you do it. But I think it would be really, really cool. I love the fact that you're going to have these home site games in the new college football playoff model, whether it's here or whether it's other places. I just think that's really awesome. And it just creates a huge buzz around your town. Obviously here in Oxford, we know football weekends are huge. It drives the economy. It drives so many different things. And so, adding something of that magnitude in mid-December, right before Christmas would be really, really cool. But yeah, we better get ready for infrastructure and traffic and all that stuff because it's certainly going to come with it.
All right. And my show, I do things. I did the same thing with Walker. Pretty much anybody that's come on there, we go down the history train. And my favorite basketball game that I always talk about attending was Ole Miss and Kentucky in 1997. Dick Vitale was in town. You guys beat the Wildcats. Tell me about the lead up to that ball game and honestly performing at such a high level because that was a Kentucky team that had weapons, like real weapons. That's old school Kentucky.
Yeah, I mean, that team was phenomenal. I think they finished maybe second that year. They'd won the national championship the year before, and they won it the next year in '98. But yeah, that was amazing. And to me, what means the most was the fact that our freshman year, we went to Lexington and played Kentucky up there and just got hammered. We lost like 90-60, and it really wasn't even that close. And so to be able to make that much progress, to the very next year they come to Oxford, we're able to win that game. And of course we had the court rush and all those things. And you grow up watching Brent Musburger and Dick Vitale on TV, and they're doing your game. It was really, really fun. And I think it was really a springboard for us to take the next step and win a bunch of games that year, win a bunch of games the next year. But it was really fun. And I was talking to somebody the other day. Anytime you play Kentucky, that's going to be the Super Bowl for whoever's playing them. It's the Alabama game in football or whatever that is. But as a 19-year-old sophomore, that was a pretty big time experience to be a part of that. Had a lot of guys play really well that day, and it was really fun time in Oxford.
I remember it might have been your freshman year. Ole Miss went down to Gainesville and got popped by Florida. And Rob Evans in the press conference immediately after is like, you better get your licks in now because we're coming. It was a speech like that. And to see that program grow to what it was all the way through into the early years of Rod Barnes and the Provine posse, I mean, that feels like a roadmap for Ole Miss basketball under Chris Beard, in my opinion.
I agree. And I see some similarities between Coach Evans and Coach Beard, just the way they handle people, the way they motivate, obviously know a ton about basketball. They want to get the community involved. Coach Evans was the best at just, the players would run through a wall for him. He was that type of guy. And, that quote you just mentioned, I mean, I remember so many of those where, we might've been a little down and he just said something that would just put us right back into a great place and get us ready for the next game or whatever that was. But yeah, I think you're right. I think that there's a template, there's a model for how it's been done here before. And we've had great coaches here, Coach Barnes, you mentioned, Coach Kennedy, Coach Davis, they've all done great things to build to the foundation of the program. But our hope is that we can just take that next step, similar to what we've done in football. We've got to have that consistency and build a program that can, year in, year out, be a perennial NCAA tournament team. And as we all know, when you get in the tournament, you never know what can happen. So I'm excited about that. But thank you for bringing up Coach Evans. He's one of my favorite people in the world, and really love that guy.
Yeah, that's my era of Ole Miss basketball. When everybody asks me questions, other than the Gerald Glass, Chris Jackson game, that era is my era of Ole Miss basketball. And if you want to talk about women's basketball, Coach Yo goes up to Rupp Arena and just completely, I think 10 minutes to go in the game, all 5 freshmen were on the court. And it's a long way from going winless in the SEC.
It is. What a journey. Her second year, they go 0-16 in the league. And, they just finished third. And obviously that's really big. We've been finishing fourth, and we've been picking up South Carolina in the semifinals of the tournament every year. So it'll be nice to, hopefully you can go up there and win and maybe see them in the finals this year. But yeah, to finish third and just win the game she's won and build the program, 6 years in and just to have the consistency, just a great team she puts on the floor every, night in and night out. She's super involved in the community. Her energy is contagious. So very blessed to have her as our head coach here. And, even though we're 6 years in, I feel like we're just getting started with her. We've got some really cool things, and I say it all the time. And I think her program's one of them. We're not afraid around here to talk about expectations and winning championships, and not just SEC championships, winning national championships. We've done it. We've done it in baseball. We've done it in women's golf. Like, if you don't talk about it and talk it into existence, it's not going to happen. But she talks about it. She feels like we can win a national championship here in women's basketball, and I certainly believe that we can do it as well.
I'll tell you what, you're hearing that word quite a bit ever since Coach Bianco was able to do that. And speaking of which, the new cream jerseys are going to be debuted soon for Ole Miss baseball. Which strip for Ole Miss baseball is your favorite?
Which what? I'm sorry?
Which uniform for Ole Miss baseball is your favorite?
This is kind of a joke with me and my 19-year-old son, because he's a huge uniform guy. And anytime something comes out, he's like, this is awesome or whatever. I'm just not a huge, I like good looking uniforms, but it's not like, I'm not going to sit around and talk about them all day or whatever. So got a little bit of a hard question for me. I like it's hard to beat the Sunday powders. I mean, that's just a staple now. And, you're seeing a lot of teams around the country mimic, our uniforms. I think there was a school maybe last year, the year before, that's big uniform unveil of, these powders. They looked exactly like ours. And I was like, who wants to tell them? Like, we did this like 10 years ago, or whatever. So, but I think that the Ole Miss colors, whether baseball, basketball, football, track, whatever sport we're playing, it's just easy to have great unis. When you have the navy and the red and the white, and then you throw in the powder, you can put together some pretty cool uniform combinations. We're actually working on some stuff for football as well for next year, and so I think it'll be fun. But yeah, I'm anxious for the cream. I think that's going to look really cool and something new. Anytime you can throw something new out there, that's pretty neat.
Any chance in football we'll see the return of the blue numbered white jerseys?
Potentially. Yeah. We're kind of looking across the board at everything. As we know, Coach Kiffin likes multiple uniform combinations, which we've seen the past 2 years. I think we've had 24 different uniform combinations in the last 2 years in the regular season. So I don't anticipate that changes. And so obviously the more options we can have, the better. So I don't know if that specific look, but we're definitely looking at some creative things.
Outstanding. Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Keith Carter, Ole Miss Athletic Director, thank you so much for coming on the show. And please, I'd love to do this again.
Absolutely, Stephen. Enjoyed it. And anytime.
All right, man. Thank you.